In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the pros and cons of being self-employed. And specifically what I do is I'm a contractor. So this would probably apply to anyone starting up any sort of business. And I'm just going to talk about my experience. Now, I'm not going to be able to get into everything, nor will I remember to talk about everything in this video. So I will try to keep it as concise as possible and give you some information about my experience with the pros and cons of being my own boss. All right, here we go. All right, I'm not going to go all the pros and all the cons. I'm just going to talk about whatever I want to talk about. So I would say the first big pro is you are kind of in control of your own schedule. For me, that can also be a con. All right, so it depends on how you look at it. I set my own hours, right? So if I want to start work at 6 o'clock in the morning, if people will let me in their house, I could technically go there at 6 o'clock in the morning. If I want to start at 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock, whatever time I want to go, as long as it works with the customer, that's fine, right? And I have definitely adjusted my schedule based on certain customers' needs. I've worked for people who go to work really early in the morning, so I can go there earlier. I have people that are retired and they sleep in, so I go there later, and I've adjusted my schedule a little bit to meet theirs. But if I want to take a day off to go snowboarding in the winter, I can do that because I just send them a text or a call and say, hey, I'm not going to be there tomorrow or whatever. It's not really the end of the world. Versus if you're going to work for somebody else, then you have to, if you work for somebody else. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I don't know if people realize how write-offs work. So I would say this is a pro. Because, a lot of times, when I tell people how much I charge, they think, oh, wow, that's a lot of money or whatever. And I'm like, well, that's not exactly that's not what I get. That's not my pocket change, right? So there's a lot of write-offs that are part of a business that you don't normally get to write things off when you're just an employee, if that makes sense. So like my truck, my work truck, it is 100% write-off, and it is a expensive piece of equipment, but the truck is a write-off, the gas is a write-off, the maintenance on it is all write-off, the registration, it's a business vehicle. So anything I spend on it, basically, if I make X dollars and I spend whatever on the truck, that lowers my taxable income down. So that kind of stuff helps you out. So it doesn't really matter what you're doing for your job. If you're doing construction, it could be tools or truck or whatever. If you are a videographer, like I'm getting into this kind of stuff, cameras, computer equipment, all that kind of stuff, whatever the equipment is specialized for your job, you can technically write it off, at least in New York State. I'm sure every state's different. I would say another pro is in my line of work, I get to have real relationships with my customers. I suppose depending on the job that you're in, if you're an employee, you probably could have close relationships with your customers. But in my specific situation, I have built these relationships, these connections with people. And the people that have worked for me over the years don't have those same connections with the people. And they like that too. I mean, like when I worked for guys, I liked going to work and coming home and leaving my work there. But there is some value that I get out of getting to know people and getting to know what they need and providing a service for them. And it's like a two-way street, right? Like I provide a service for them, they provide me with income, and we are helping each other out, and everybody benefits in the end. So back to what I just said a second ago, though, the whole like leaving it at home for my employees when I had them, I would say that is a con, because being self-employed, I always feel like I'm working even if I'm not. If I am, like I said earlier, if I want to take a day off to go snowboarding, I've actually been in the Adirondacks snowboarding 4 hours away from here, 3 hours away, and gotten a phone call that there was a leak in a bathroom that we had just done, and I was freaking out, and I was going to get in the car and drive back home. I told the guy, give me a couple hours, I'm in the Adirondacks, I'll be home. And he started laughing, and he was like kind of joking with me, and it was like, that was not funny, but he didn't realize where I was, and the whole thing. So it was once I calmed down and I realized he was actually joking, and I got over the bad joke that I thought it was okay. But it's like I was there, and while I'm off doing these things, in the back of my head, I'm always thinking like, oh, I got this job over here, I got this thing over there, and I'm always planning and figuring out and thinking about the job and which materials I'm going to use, and there's so much stuff, so there's so much planning going on constantly for me that it never feels like I'm not working, even if I'm not working. So anyway, that's a con. All right, if you're getting anything of value out of this, there's a couple things you could do for me. Go down below, hit that little thumbs up, that little like button, all right, if you like this. And while you're down there, if you haven't already and you're interested in business tips, how-to construction-y videos or tool reviews, stuff like that, anything around business and construction and general things like that, subscribe to this channel. And if you subscribe, hit that little bell. It's a little notification bell, and it'll let you know when I have new videos released. And while you're down there, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think, if there's any videos you want me to talk about. All right, back to the video. Another pro, I would say, is as far as money is concerned, again, you have more earning potential, potentially. So if you're an employee, your boss sets your pay, right? You might be able to go to him or her and say, hey, I want a raise, and you might get a couple dollars or something. But it's not up to you, right? So as a self-employed person, if I realize that my business expenses and my life expenses and everything expenses is just, my pay is not cutting it to pay the bills, I can readjust my what I charge accordingly, and I can essentially give myself a raise, which I have done. I've been in business for, let us say, 10, 11 years, and I've given myself a raise every couple years, basically. As my overhead increases, as my expertise increases, as my demand increases, the more jobs that I turn down. People told me this a long time ago, because I said, I'm too busy, I'm always booked out, 6 months, a year. I used to tell people, call me 6 months in advance. And they were like, you're not charging enough. So I started charging more money. And then I started getting booked out a year. And people were like, you're not charging enough. I'm like, I already upped my rate. What? So I upped my rate again, thinking, the price is going to deter people, and it's not. And I was not living like a king or anything. So, there was like a difference here that I had to find the right middle ground, where I'm charging enough, not charging too much, giving people a good value. And that's really hard to figure out. So I guess that could be considered a con, is that you have to figure out where you are supposed to be charging to gain the maximum profit without losing jobs or anything like that. So anyway, so now I'm at a point where I'm charging what I think is a lot, and I still have way more work than I can handle, and it's weird. You know, I talked to somebody recently who is in another state, and we were talking about wages, and he was saying that I'm basically right where I should be, maybe even a little low, which I was like, okay, you know, and even when I told my accountant what I was charging, they said that I was too low still. And I'm like, I don't get it. So I'm, like I said, I think I'm high compared to other people, but I'm low compared to maybe the industry standard. So whatever, I'm in the middle, I'm fine, you know, that's just another thing you got to figure out. I'm going to talk about another con now is the responsibility of employees. It's been hard to find and keep good employees. I've had some good employees. I've had some decent employees. I've had a couple not so great employees. And when they've all worked for me, we've made it work. You know, I've tried to figure out what they excelled at and let them do those tasks. What ended up happening, especially when I had a few different employees at the same time, was I could say like, okay, this guy's good at that, you do this. This guy's good at that, you do this. I'll do this. But then a lot of times what would happen is, you know, we're on a job and I've got all these guys and I've got to go on this other job, so I'm leaving them and I'm leaving and I'm coming back and there's all this coordinating that has to happen, and if they can't handle doing the entire job by themselves, then I definitely have to be there. But if there's this other job that I only need me on, it's not big enough to have 3 guys, then I have to go there nights or weekends, and that goes back to what I was saying earlier about like never having time off. And when I was building this business, I worked 7 days a week. I would pride myself on the fact that I didn't take holidays. You know, I used to joke that Labor Day is for laboring and that we shouldn't take Labor Day off, because that's how, when I was kind of brought up in the construction world, that's kind of the way that I was raised. So I've since grown out of that, and I don't believe that you should work yourself to death. But while you're young and you're fit and you can do that, while your body can handle it, I would say go ahead. As I'm getting older, working 7 days a week and working 10, 12-hour days just doesn't work for me anymore. My body just, it screams at me when I do that. Another big pro I just thought about is opportunity, right? So again, if you're the employee of someone, you have a job that they say this is your job, right? When I am the employer or self-employed, I can dictate what I do. So when I worked for other contractors, I didn't have a choice of what I did, right? We did roofing, we did tile, we did everything. You could think of framing, siding, windows, flooring, everything, right? The only thing we really didn't do when I worked for other guys was drywall and painting. And when I got into business for myself, especially doing like a small bathroom project or something, I realized that I needed to do basically everything myself. So I started doing the drywall and the painting, as well as the framing, the demo, the tile, the cabinet installation, the trim work. And it just is a lot of work to put on yourself. And when I was younger, as I said earlier, it worked. It worked out just fine. I was able to handle it somehow. And as the business has been growing, the demand is getting bigger, it is harder for me to do all of the tasks on one job and still get to all the other jobs. So that's why I've had employees, and I've tried subcontractors, and I've tried all these different things. I haven't found exactly what's right yet, but right now I'm working towards kind of pivoting during this COVID thing out of the whole I have to do everything myself, which is where I've been for the last like 5 years, And, you know, I started, it's a really bad time for this, but reaching out to other contractors again and trying to get them in on jobs. And I've done this even in the last 5 years, especially with drywall. Any job that's a little bigger than I want to deal with, more than a couple sheets, I'll hire a drywall guy. Other than, of course, my own house, which is I hung my entire house by myself, and I think I had help hanging it, and then I finished it myself. But anyway, it's hard to, you know, I guess that's another con. It's hard to coordinate all the other parts that fit into it. So in my trade, you know, if I'm going to have a tile guy and a drywall guy and a painter and a plumber and an electrician, and I have to get them all scheduled to land at the appropriate times, because the tile guy can't come until after the drywall guy's in, and the drywall guy can't come till after the electrician and the plumber are in, and they can even battle over who gets in first. And you know, it turns into quite the arrangement process that you're trying to do, and it's difficult, you know, and that alone takes a lot of time and energy to do, aside from the actual work. So like, you know, people just, I think, sometimes think that this stuff just happens, but there's a lot of phone calls and preparation and figuring that has to go on, you know, timing, and there's a lot that goes into it. I'm sure there's a million other things that I could talk about, pros and cons of being self-employed, but I won't. So basically, I think that it is great. I don't know that I could ever go back to being an employee because of the flexibility and the freedom. It is a lot of hard work. So, and it is a lot of self-discipline, which I definitely lack sometimes. Because you are setting your own schedule, it's up to you to force yourself to go to work. So if you're the type of person that doesn't want to go to work, you can find every excuse in the book not to go. You know, I think it's worth it. Depends on what you're doing, maybe, but I think everybody could have a shot at it. I will say that depending on the state you're in, the physical state, not your mental state, whatever state you live in, like I live in New York State, and there's a whole lot of rules and regulations and guidelines and taxes and there's this whole mess of stuff you have to learn, which is basically trial and error, or trial by fire, really. You just kind of like pick stuff up as you go, and you learn more, and you just hope that you don't screw up bad enough where you owe the IRS tons of money, you know, which I've done. My first business that I started, right now in Borsellino Carpentry, my first business was Borsellino Construction when I lived out in Massachusetts. And that I started up as a subcontractor building homes. I was like a framer and finish carpenter, and I did not realize you had to save taxes. I did, but not realize as much. So when it came tax time, I owed a couple $1,000s, and at that time that like wiped me out, right? So there's a lot of things you got to learn to be self-employed, and I'm hoping to get into that kind of stuff on these Monday business tip kind of videos. So again, if you made it through this video, thank you for watching, and let me know in the comments what you think, and if there's anything you want me to talk about on one of these business videos, and I'll see you on the next video.